Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit about Season 3, Episode 6 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the SEHLAT who ate us on tail. Now, I was debating, kind of tossing it around, pondering even, if I should talk about this particular episode of Star Trek, because here's the thing. When you include my second favorite is Star Trek captain in all of Star Trek canon, a captain who arguably has some of the most deepest lore in all of Star Trek, right? Whose series was single-handedly responsible for forming much of the lore that's established in Star Trek, right? There's a lot of things that you're going to have to pay attention to, right? So when I was watching this episode, I couldn't tell if I liked the episode or not because there were so many things that just was rubbing me the wrong way. So first, what I like to always do is get into a little bit about what's going on in the episode. What I like to always do, and then give a little bit about how this episode fits into canon and how it relates to other Star Trek and stuff like that. So let's follow that pattern. So in this episode, right, we got we got Lieutenant Commander Kirk, who has basically just got promoted to first officer of the USS Farragut under somebody who was the captain, who was the Captain Burrell or something like that. Somebody basically who is not Captain Garavik, who I'm gonna get into later. First of all, let me talk little bit about what I'm going to be referencing when I get into the canon part, and I'll continue with the synopsis. Anyway, we get this situation where they roll up on this planet and they detect this situation where the planet is destroyed. And when I say destroyed, it's a beautiful situation where the planet is hit with like some kind of graviton weapon. Planet is destroyed, of course, because the Farragut is in orbit at the time, is heavily damaged. They send out a distress call. The Enterprise comes to assist, all right? Lieutenant Commander Kirk is basically now in charge of the Farragut because the captain is beamed over to the Enterprise sick bay. She's in a lot of problems and everything like that. And a lot of the sick people is beamed over. Some of the Enterprise crew, including Spock, Nurse Chapel, which I just find to be, interesting, is beamed over to the Farragut to kind of assist in the repairs and figure out what destroyed this planet. All right, now, I'm not going to get too much into spoilers because some people might want to watch this episode. I'm going to get into, and why this video is pretty much the focus, pretty much the focus is of this video, how it fits into canon, and what episodes am I going to be using to reference, my perspectives on this. I think I'm going to go with the episode Obsession from Star Trek, the original series. I'm going to go with the episode Spacey from the original series, right? I'm even going to throw in maybe some information from the Wrath of Khan even. Yeah, maybe even that. So basically it's like this. In this episode, they talk about, they focus a lot on Kirk, his leadership style, how he handles situations, how he utilizes the resources of his crew and the information he receives, okay, in this particular crisis. Now, what's going on also in this crisis is that we have this gigantic, and when I say gigantic, super huge vessel, man. It has this crazy look with a mouth on the front for some strange reason and tentacles. I don't know what it is with New Trek having their ships have hentai tentacles, but in Star Trek we usually have things like graviton beams, tractor beams, stuff like that. Cool technological stuff. But in essence, this gigantic ship is what's responsible for destroying the planet and, consuming the planet. And now is going towards another planet, which they can't just simply evacuate because of the prime directive. So they got to figure out how to stop this thing. All right. So let's talk about it. First grade, Lieutenant Commander Kirk, first officer of the Farragut. To my knowledge, I think it was about 11 years between the episode Obsession and when Kirk was a lieutenant serving aboard the Farragut. In the episode Obsession, we find out that I think it was a dichronium type entity or something like that ended up killing half of the Farragut crew, including the captain, whose name was Garavik. Garavik was a dude. He ended up having a son who in extended canon ended up tracking down the dichronium entity, killing it, crash landing on the planet. We ain't gonna even say extended canon, because in Lower Decks, I believe it's called, they have a planet called Ensign Garavik. Where he ended up crash landing his shuttle. So suffices to say, it's a lot of lore surrounding the Farragut's captain, and Kirk's position on the Farragut. And nowhere in canon does it state that he made first officer of the Farragut or that he continued serving on the Farragut after that particular incident. Now, we could do some math and everything like that, try to figure out, because what year of the 5-year mission that the episode Obsession took place in and how that, chronologically fits with where this episode is, but who wants to do that? Now, they go into Kirk's leadership style as being kind of indecisive and everything like that under pressure. And the thing is that I remember this young Kirk, this young cadet Kirk, who basically reprogrammed the Kobayashi Maru and was commended for thinking outside the box because he was able to save not only the Kobayashi Maru, but, pass the test, something that had never been done before. Why? Because it is a no-win situation, no-win scenario, like for real. So you trying to tell me Cadet Kirk can make that decision and make all those types of leadership, it can display that type of personality that Kirk has. But now that he's a lieutenant commander for some strange reason, we having issues? No. Now, one could point to the same episode Obsession, where Kirk was basically hesitant at shooting the entity, and that shows a little bit of indecision on his part. But yeah, that's a little thing. And again, that's when he was a lieutenant. Lieutenant commander means after that, you gain some experience, meaning that he had already learned from that situation and the shortcomings of his personality during that situation with that diachronium entity. Then you're going to have Kirk going somewhere to Salk to play three-dimensional chess. Now, I was thinking to myself, this is a great opportunity for them to have Spock, take the place of Kirk's chess playing partner, and that's how they formed the basis of them being chess players with each other. But no, not to do none of that. And then Nurse Chapel instead of Dr. M'Benga beaming over to the Farragut. Now, one could argue that Dr. M'Benga was handling the patients and everything on an Enterprise, and one could argue that. But if you think about canon, if they're going to take a medical officer on an OA mission, it's usually the chief medical officer, especially during that time period. Bones always went. They could have took Nurse Chapel during that time, but guess what? They took Bones, even though he was scared of transporting. They could have took Nurse Chapel, but guess what? They took Bones. So in other words, take M'Benga. Come on, man, y'all got to stop focusing on Nurse Chapel. And now we get to the Doomsday Machine. That wasn't really a Doomsday Machine, okay? Now, you trying to tell me that Kirk, Spock, all these people encountered a Doomsday similar type of device, right? Earlier than the episode of Doomsday. And during the episode of Doomsday, it never occurred to them how to destroy a weapon sort of kind of like this. Like it never occurred to them from the inside. Like never occurred to them. It never occurred to the writers of this Strange New Worlds episode that the episode Doomsday happened. And then you're going to use the same basic kind of method. Instead of using a starship, you're going to use photon torpedoes? Really? And let's talk about that machine. Let's talk about the ship. Because once the ship was destroyed, they find out, spoilers, they find out that it was thousands of humans on board. Why? Because it was a generational ship. A generational ship from where? Earth, you might say. Earth from when, you might say. Right after, what was it, World War III, they decided to leave Earth, and they ended up, get this, on the outskirts of the rim of the galaxy with no warp. Yeah, you heard that right. The outskirts of the rim of the galaxy with no warp, which leads me to believe that they go through the same type of wormhole or something like that that the Voyager probe went through. But if that was the case, you wouldn't have humans on board. Or if you had humans on board, there'd be avatars. Why? Because whatever turned the Voyager probe into Voyager would have turned that generational ship into something similar. Wouldn't you agree? And then humans don't recognize humans. So the bad people from the generational ship beam over, and it never occurred to them, hey, this kind of look almost like English. Yeah, we know it's been about 100 years, but we could recognize a lot of these symbols and stuff. It's kind of like, hey, humanoid people, what's up? We kind of look alike. What's going on with that? So in the episode Spacey, right, Khan and all of them who left kind of around the same time, right, after the eugenics wars, They left. They didn't have a warp drive, and they didn't end up nowhere near the outskirts of the edge of known the galactic space. Like, really, that really? And so let me get this straight. The reason this thing is running around destroying stuff is because this ship is basically like, oh, okay, we need to increase the size of our ship to, I guess, increase the habitable spaces for the crew and everything like that. So what we do, we got so big now that we can just start, instead of ripping apart ships and the stuff like that, which we do, also, which I don't know how that's going to add too much to anything. We're going to rip apart planets. Now, understand that a warp core going off, warp core blowing up, is not going to destroy a planet. It's just not going to do that. So you're trying to tell me y'all going to fire some photon torpedoes at an old Klingon warp drive? Oh, how's the warp drive even functional still when it got all this power drained from the power drain cord? Look, 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 look. And so then I guess the moral of the story was, how did humans end up being like this? How did they go from the best of us? Because they ended up tracking down, finding out that the people who left was like all of these, you know, the best of the best, you know, these NASA astronauts and all that kind of stuff. How did they end up going from that to, you know, doing some kind of, what was it, Pandorica type situation, ending up like they was, man, with some kind of space crazy. Look, this episode just rubbed me a lot the wrong way. But let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this episode, man, the SEHLAT who ate his own tail. If you guys got the point that they was trying to make, and maybe I got to watch it again because maybe I was just seeing it at the wrong time. But they getting a whole history and understanding of what Kirk is and who Kirk is and his history and everything about him, personality, everything just wrong. And it's not the actor's fault. The actor is doing a good job portraying Kirk. But again, it is the writers for this new Trek, man. Look, man, I hope when Skydance take over, and I hear that when that Skydance people like the new Trek. So like, anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.